Millionaire keeps his wife hidden in a mansion out of shame and goes to a party with another woman. Upon arriving there, something shocks him. He can't believe what he saw. The imposing mansion stood like a fortress on the outskirts of Indianapolis. Its high walls and security cameras a stark contrast to the warmth of the Midwest's heartland. Inside, Emily Carter gazed out of a grand bay window, her reflection a ghostly apparition against the stormy sky. Lightning illuminated the manicured grounds, briefly dispelling the shadows that seemed to cling to every corner of her gilded cage. Emily's slender fingers traced the cool glass, a habit she'd developed over years of confinement. At 32, she possessed a beauty that time had only refined, yet her hazel eyes held a weariness that belied her years. Her chestnut hair, once vibrant, now hung limply around her shoulders, mirroring the wilting of her spirit. "Another day in paradise," she murmured, her voice barely audible over the distant rumble of thunder. The irony wasn't lost on her. This sprawling estate, with its marble floors and priceless art, was anything but paradise. It was a prison, one crafted by the man she had once loved, Jacob Hayes. As if summoned by her thoughts, the door to the study opened. Jacob entered, his imposing figure filling the doorway. At 45, he cut an impressive figure, tall, broad-shouldered, with salt and pepper hair that only added to his distinguished air. His tailored suit spoke of wealth and power, a stark reminder of the world that existed beyond these walls. "Emily, darling?" Jacob's voice was smooth, practiced. "I've been looking for you. We need to discuss the upcoming gala." Emily turned, her face a carefully constructed mask of neutrality. "What's there to discuss, Jacob? It's not as if I'll be attending." Jacob's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Now, we've been over this. It's for your own protection. The world out there, it's not kind to people like us." "People like us?" Emily's laugh was hollow. "You mean people like you? I wouldn't know about the world out there, would I? I haven't been allowed to experience it in years." Jacob moved closer, his cologne, expensive, suffocating, filling the air between them. "Emily, everything I do for us, for our safety, our privacy." "Our privacy?" Emily's voice rose slightly. "Is that what you call parading around with Olivia Bennet at every social function while I'm hidden away here?" A flicker of annoyance crossed Jacob's face. "Olivia is a necessary part of our public image. You know that, it's all for show." "And what am I, Jacob? What part do I play in this elaborate production of yours?" Jacob reached out, his hand cupping Emily's cheek. She flinched almost imperceptibly but didn't pull away. "You're my heart, Emily. The real thing. Olivia, the galas, the public persona, it's all smoke and mirrors. You're what matters." Emily stepped back, breaking contact. "If I matter so much, why am I a secret? Why am I trapped here while you live your life out there?" "You're not trapped." Jacob's tone hardened slightly. "This is for your own good. The media, the public, they'd tear you apart. I'm protecting you." "Protecting me?" Emily's voice cracked. "Or controlling me?" Jacob's eyes flashed dangerously. "I think you need some time to calm down. We'll discuss this later." He turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Emily? Remember, the new housekeeper starts today. Do try to be civil." As the door closed behind him, Emily slumped into a nearby armchair, the weight of her isolation pressing down on her. She glanced at the bookshelf, filled with volumes she'd read countless times. Each book a window to a world she couldn't touch, stories of lives she couldn't live. Hours passed, the storm outside matching the tumult in Emily's heart. As evening fell, a soft knock on the door roused her from her melancholy. "Come in," she called, expecting to see the new housekeeper. Instead, a young woman entered, her demeanor confident, her eyes sharp and assessing. She wasn't dressed like household staff, her jeans and leather jacket a stark departure from the uniforms Emily was accustomed to seeing. "Mrs. Hayes?" the woman asked, her voice low and urgent. Emily stood, confusion and a hint of fear crossing her features. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" The woman glanced over her shoulder before closing the door. "My name is Rachel Brooks. I'm a journalist, and I'm here to help you." Emily's heart raced. "A journalist? Here? I don't understand." "You shouldn't be here. If Jacob finds out—" "Jacob Hayes isn't here," Rachel interrupted. "And even if he was, this is too important. Mrs. Hayes, Emily, you're the wife the world doesn't know exists. The woman Jacob Hayes has kept hidden for years." Emily felt the room spin. She gripped the back of the chair for support. How do you know about me? Rachel's expression softened. It's taken months of investigation, but I've uncovered the truth. Emily, what's being done to you? It's not right, it's not legal, you're essentially a prisoner here. No. Emily shook her head, years of conditioning kicking in. Jacob's protecting me. The world out there is yours to experience, Rachel finished. Emily, when was the last time you left this house? When was the last time you spoke to family, to friends? Tears welled in Emily's eyes as the truth she'd been denying for years finally broke through. I can't remember, she whispered. Rachel took a step closer. I'm here to offer you a choice, Emily. A chance to reclaim your life, your identity. But it won't be easy. Jacob Hayes is a powerful man with a lot to lose if the truth comes out. Emily's mind raced. Years of isolation, of being told the world was too dangerous, too cruel, warred with a spark of hope, of longing for freedom she'd almost forgotten she wanted. Why? Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Why are you doing this? Rachel's eyes met Emily's, determination evident in her gaze. Because every person deserves to live freely, to make their own choices, and because your story, Emily, could help other women trapped in similar situations. A million thoughts flooded Emily's mind. Fear, hope, uncertainty, and a tiny flicker of something she hadn't felt in years. Defiance. What do I need to do? Emily asked, her voice gaining strength. Rachel smiled, a mix of relief and resolve on her face. First, we need to get you out of here. But it has to be your choice, Emily. Are you ready to leave this golden cage behind? As the storm raged outside, Emily felt something shift within her. The woman who had entered this room wasn't the same one standing here now. With a deep breath, she squared her shoulders and met Rachel's gaze. Yes, Emily said, her voice steady for the first time in years. I'm ready. As Rachel began to outline their plan, Emily felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. The road ahead would be difficult, fraught with danger and uncertainty. But as she looked around the opulent room that had been her prison for so long, she knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, it would be her choice, her life, her story. The first chapter of Emily Carter's new life was about to begin, and for the first time in years, she was ready to turn the page. The Indianapolis night enveloped Emily and Rachel as they slipped out of the mansion, the darkness both a shield and a reminder of Emily's years in isolation. Rachel's car, an inconspicuous sedan, waited just beyond the property line. As they drove through the quiet streets, Emily pressed her face against the cool glass, drinking in the city lights she hadn't seen in years. Where are we going? Emily asked, her voice a mix of excitement and trepidation. Rachel glanced at her, a reassuring smile on her face. A safe house. It's not fancy, but it's secure. We'll regroup there and plan our next steps. As they drove, Emily's mind raced. The adrenaline of escape was wearing off, replaced by a gnawing fear. Jacob, he'll come looking for me. He has resources, connections. I know, Rachel nodded grimly. That's why we need to move fast. Emily, I need you to understand something. What we're doing, it's not just about getting you out. It's about exposing the truth. Emily turned to face her, brow furrowed. What do you mean? Rachel took a deep breath. Jacob Hayes isn't just a controlling husband. He's involved in some seriously shady business dealings. Your story, your captivity, it's just the tip of the iceberg. The safe house turned out to be a modest apartment in a nondescript building. As Rachel secured the door behind them, Emily took in her surroundings. The small living room was cluttered with papers, laptops, and photography equipment. It's not much, Rachel said apologetically, but it's off the grid. We should be safe here for now. Emily nodded, sinking onto the worn couch. The reality of her situation was beginning to set in. What happens now? Rachel sat across from her, expression serious. Now we prepare. Emily, I need you to tell me everything, every detail about your life with Jacob, no matter how small it might seem. As Emily began to speak, pouring out years of isolation and control, Rachel listened intently, occasionally jotting down notes. Hours passed, and as the first light of dawn began to creep through the windows, Emily felt drained but oddly liberated. Thank you, Emily, Rachel said softly. I know that wasn't easy, but your story, combined with the evidence I've gathered, it could bring Jacob down. Emily's eyes widened. Bring him down? Rachel, what exactly have you uncovered? Rachel hesitated, then moved to a filing cabinet in the corner. She pulled out a thick folder and handed it to Emily. See for yourself. As Emily flipped through the pages, her shock grew. Financial records, photographs, transcripts of conversations, all pointing to a web of corruption and deceit that went far beyond her own captivity. Oh my God, Emily breathed. I knew Jacob was controlling, but this? How could I not have seen it? Rachel's voice was gentle. You were isolated, Emily, that was the point, but now you have the power to stop it. Emily looked up, a new determination in her eyes. What do I need to do? Over the next few days, Emily and Rachel worked tirelessly, piecing together the story that would expose Jacob Hayes to the world. But as they worked, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. One evening, as Rachel stepped out to meet a contact, Emily's curiosity got the better of her. She began to dig deeper into Rachel's research, and what she found made her blood run cold. Hidden among the files was information about Rachel herself. She wasn't just a journalist. She was the daughter of one of Jacob's former business partners, a man who had been ruined by Jacob's machinations. As the door opened and Rachel returned, Emily confronted her. You lied to me, she said, her voice trembling. This isn't just about justice, it's about revenge. Rachel's face fell, guilt and determination warring in her expression. Emily, No, Emily cut her off. I want the truth, all of it, now. Rachel sank into a chair, her facade crumbling. You're right. My father, Jacob, destroyed him, drove him to suicide. But Emily, that doesn't change the facts. Jacob is still guilty. He still kept you prisoner. We can still bring him down. Emily paced the small room, her mind in turmoil. I don't know if I can trust you now. How do I know you're not just using me? Rachel stood, her eyes pleading. Because despite my personal motivations, everything I've shown you is true. Emily, you have the power to stop Jacob, to prevent him from hurting anyone else. Isn't that worth fighting for? As Emily grappled with this new information, across town, Jacob Hayes was facing his own crisis. The mansion was in uproar, security teams combing the grounds, police taking statements. But Jacob's real concern lay with the woman seated across from him in his study. Olivia Bennett, his public companion for years, watched him with a mixture of disgust and fascination. A wife, Jacob, a secret wife you've kept locked away all this time. Do you have any idea how this looks? Jacob's usual composure was cracking. Olivia, you need to understand. Emily, she's fragile, unstable. I was protecting her. Olivia's laugh was bitter. Protecting her or protecting yourself? God, Jacob, I've stood by you through a lot, played my part in this charade, but this is beyond the pale. You don't understand, Jacob growled. If this gets out, if Emily talk, then what? Olivia challenged. Your empire crumbles, your dirty secrets come to light. Maybe it's time, Jacob. Maybe it's time the world saw the real you. As Jacob and Olivia's confrontation escalated, Emily made a decision. She couldn't trust Rachel fully, but she couldn't go back to her old life either. She needed to find her own path. In the dead of night, Emily slipped out of the safe house, leaving only a note for Rachel. She had no real plan, no resources, but she had something she hadn't had in years: freedom. Emily found herself wandering the streets of Indianapolis, the city both familiar and alien after her years of confinement. As dawn broke, she found herself outside a community center, its doors just opening for the day. Inside, Emily was struck by the warmth and activity. People of all ages and backgrounds moved about, engaged in various programs and activities. It was a slice of the world she'd been missing, vibrant and alive. Can I help you? A kind voice asked. Emily turned to see an older woman, her smile warm and inviting. I'm not sure, Emily admitted. I needed somewhere to go. The woman, who introduced herself as Margaret, seemed to sense Emily's distress. Why don't you come have a cup of coffee with me? Sometimes talking helps. Over coffee in Margaret's cluttered office, Emily found herself opening up. She didn't share everything, but she spoke of feeling lost, of needing to find herself again. Margaret listened patiently, then said, You know, we have a program here for women in transition. Job skills, counseling, support groups. Maybe that would be a good place for you to start. Emily felt a glimmer of hope. I'd like that, she said softly. As Emily immersed herself in the community center's programs over the next few weeks, She began to rediscover parts of herself long buried. She made friends, learned new skills, and slowly began to build a life independent of Jacob's influence. But her past wasn't ready to let her go. One afternoon, as Emily was leaving the center, she found Jacob waiting by the entrance. "Emily," he said, his voice a mixture of relief and anger. "Thank God I've found you. It's time to come home." Emily felt fear grip her heart, but something else too, a newfound strength. "No, Jacob," she said firmly. "I'm not going back. That's not my home anymore." Jacob's eyes narrowed. "Emily, be reasonable. You're not well. You need help, protection." "The only thing I needed protection from was you," Emily retorted, her voice gaining strength. "I'm done being your secret, Jacob. I'm done being controlled." As Jacob took a step towards her, a group of women from Emily's support group emerged from the center. Sensing the tension, they quickly surrounded Emily, forming a protective barrier. "Is everything okay, Em?" one of them asked, eyeing Jacob suspiciously. Emily took a deep breath, drawing strength from their presence. "Everything's fine. Mr. Hayes was just leaving." Jacob's face twisted with fury, but he was acutely aware of the witnesses. With a final menacing look at Emily, he turned and strode away. As her friends hugged her and assured her of their support, Emily felt a weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time in years, she had stood up to Jacob. It was a small victory, but a significant one. That night, as Emily sat in her small rented room, she reflected on how much had changed in such a short time. She was far from safe. Jacob wouldn't give up easily, and Rachel was still out there with her own agenda. But for the first time in years, Emily felt like she had choices. A knock on her door startled her from her thoughts. Cautiously, she approached, peering through the peephole. Her heart raced as she recognized the face on the other side. It was Olivia Bennett. Emily hesitated, her hand on the doorknob. Opening this door could change everything, but she was done hiding, done being afraid. With a deep breath, she turned the handle. As Olivia stepped into the room, Emily braced herself for whatever might come next. One thing was certain, her journey was far from over. The real fight was just beginning. Emily stood frozen, her hand still on the doorknob, as Olivia Bennett stepped into her modest room. The contrast between Olivia's designer outfit and the room's sparse furnishings couldn't have been starker. "Mrs. Hayes," Olivia said, her voice cool but not unkind. "Or do you prefer Emily?" Emily straightened her shoulders, finding her voice. "Emily is fine. What are you doing here, Miss Bennett?" Olivia's eyes scanned the room before settling back on Emily. "I think it's time we had a chat, don't you? May I sit?" Nodding mutely, Emily gestured to the room's only chair while she perched on the edge of the bed. The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken questions. Finally, Olivia spoke. "I suppose you're wondering how I found you." Emily nodded, her guard up. "The thought had crossed my mind." "Let's just say I have resources of my own," Olivia said with a wry smile. "Resources that, until recently, I used to help maintain the illusion of my relationship with your husband." Emily flinched at the word husband, a reaction that didn't go unnoticed by Olivia. "I'm not here to cause you trouble, Emily," Olivia continued. "In fact, I'm here to offer you an opportunity." Emily's brow furrowed. "An opportunity?" Olivia leaned forward, her expression intense. "To take control of your narrative, to expose Jacob for who he really is." Emily felt her heart race. "I don't understand. Why would you want to help me?" Olivia's laugh was bitter. "Because I've been complicit in Jacob's lies for far too long. I thought I was playing a part, helping to protect a man's privacy. I never imagined—" She trailed off, shaking her head. "What he did to you, Emily, it's unforgivable." As Olivia outlined her plan, Emily listened with a mixture of hope and trepidation. The idea was audacious, to use Jacob's upcoming charity gala, a high-profile event attended by Indianapolis's elite, as the stage for revealing the truth. "But why not just go to the police?" Emily asked. Olivia's expression hardened. "Jacob has too many friends in high places. We need public exposure, irrefutable evidence. And for that, we need you." As the night wore on, Emily and Olivia hashed out the details of their plan. It was risky, potentially dangerous. But as Emily caught her reflection in the mirror, eyes bright with purpose, posture straight and determined, she knew she had to do it. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. Olivia, using her connections, arranged for Emily to receive a makeover and a crash course in navigating high society. Emily, for her part, threw herself into the preparations with a fervor that surprised even her. At the community center, Emily confided in Margaret about her plans. The older woman listened with concern etched on her face. "Are you sure about this, Emily?" Margaret asked. "It sounds dangerous." Emily nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "For the first time in years, Margaret, I'm sure about something. I need to do this not just for me, but for any other woman who might be in a similar situation." Margaret squeezed her hand. "Then we're behind you, 100%. The night of the gala arrived, crisp and clear. The venue, one of Indianapolis's most prestigious hotels, glittered with lights and the flash of cameras. Inside, the city's wealthiest and most influential mingled, unaware of the drama about to unfold. Jacob Hayes stood near the center of the room, Olivia on his arm, playing the part of the charismatic power couple. But Olivia could feel the tension radiating off him. He'd been on edge ever since Emily's disappearance, his carefully constructed world threatening to crumble. "Relax," Olivia murmured. "You're drawing attention." Jacob's grip on his champagne flute tightened. "How can I relax? She's still out there, Olivia. If she talks, then we'll deal with it," Olivia said smoothly. "Now smile. The mayor's heading this way." As Jacob plastered on his public face, greeting the mayor with practiced charm, Olivia glanced at her watch. It was almost time. Across the room, Emily took a deep breath, smoothing down her gown, a stunning creation that Olivia had arranged for her. She caught her reflection in a nearby mirror and barely recognized herself. Gone was the pale, timid woman who had lived in Jacob's shadow. In her place stood someone confident, determined. A familiar face appeared at her elbow. Rachel Brooks, looking elegant in a simple black dress. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. Emily nodded. After her initial anger at Rachel's deception, they had come to an understanding. Rachel's investigative skills were crucial to their plan, and Emily had to admit that the journalist's passion for exposing the truth aligned with her own goals. "As ready as I'll ever be," Emily replied. Rachel squeezed her arm reassuringly. "Remember, I'll be right there with you. We've got this." As they made their way through the crowd, Emily could feel curious glances and whispers following them. She was an unknown face in a sea of familiar elite, and in this world, that made her interesting. They approached the small stage where the evening speeches were to take place. The current speaker, a local philanthropist, was just wrapping up. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she saw Jacob and Olivia making their way to the stage. It was almost time. Jacob took the microphone, his voice smooth and confident as he began to speak about the charity's mission. Emily watched him, marveling at how easily the lies seemed to flow from him. And then, right on cue, Olivia stepped forward, gently taking the microphone from Jacob. He frowned, confusion evident on his face, but years of maintaining a public image kept him from making a scene. "Ladies and gentlemen," Olivia began, her voice clear and strong. "I apologize for the interruption, but there's something you all need to know. For years I've stood by Jacob Hayes, playing the part of his companion, but it's all been a lie." A murmur ran through the crowd. Jacob's face had gone pale, his eyes darting between Olivia and the exit. "The truth is," Olivia continued, "Jacob Hayes is a married man. His wife Emily has been kept hidden from the world, a prisoner in her own home." The murmur turned into a roar of shocked voices. Camera flashes exploded around the room. "But don't take my word for it," Olivia said, her eyes finding Emily in the crowd. "Emily, would you like to tell your story?" All eyes in the room turned to Emily as she made her way to the stage. She could see Jacob's face, a mask of fury and panic. For a moment she faltered, years of conditioning making her want to shrink away from his anger. But then she caught sight of her reflection in the ballroom's mirrors. The strong, determined woman looking back at her gave Emily the courage she needed. She stepped onto the stage, took the microphone from Olivia, and faced the crowd. "My name is Emily Hayes," she began, her voice shaking slightly before growing stronger. "For the past 7 years, I have been held captive by the man you all know as Jacob Hayes. Tonight, I'm here to reclaim my life and tell the truth." As Emily spoke, laying bare the years of isolation and control, the room fell into a stunned silence. She could see shock, disgust, and sympathy on the faces before her. Reporters who had come to cover a routine charity event were now furiously taking notes or speaking urgently into phones. Jacob, his face a thundercloud, tried to approach the stage, but security guards, alerted by Olivia, blocked his path. When Emily finished speaking, The silence lasted for a heartbeat before the room erupted. Questions were shouted from all directions, camera flashes nearly blinding in their intensity. Olivia stepped forward, her arm protectively around Emily. "We have documentation to support everything Emily has said," she announced. "It will all be made available to the proper authorities." As they were ushered off the stage by security, Emily caught a glimpse of Jacob being confronted by several angry-looking men. Board members, she guessed, already distancing themselves from the scandal. In a quiet room off the main hall, Emily sank into a chair, her legs shaky. Olivia, Rachel and Margaret, who had been waiting in the wings, gathered around her. "You did it," Rachel said, her eyes shining with admiration and the thrill of a huge story. "Emily, you were amazing." Olivia nodded in agreement. "It's over, Emily. He can't hurt you anymore." But Emily shook her head slowly. "No," she said, her voice tired but determined. "It's not over. It's just beginning." Over the next few days, Emily's story exploded across national news. She found herself at the center of a media storm, her face splashed across newspapers and TV screens. It was overwhelming, but Emily was surprised to find that she didn't feel afraid. For the first time in years, she felt powerful. Jacob, unsurprisingly, didn't go down without a fight. He held a press conference, trying to paint Emily as mentally unstable, claiming he had only been trying to protect her. But the evidence against him was damning. Financial records, witness testimonies, and Emily's own compelling account painted a picture of control and abuse that was hard to deny. As the legal battles began, Emily found herself with an unexpected support system. Olivia, feeling guilty for her unwitting role in Emily's captivity, used her connections to set Emily up with top-notch legal representation. Rachel's exposé, published in a major national magazine, kept public opinion firmly on Emily's side, and the women from the community center formed a protective barrier against the more aggressive paparazzi. One afternoon, about a week after the gala, Emily sat in her lawyer's office poring over documents. She was no longer content to be a passive participant in her own story. She was determined to understand every aspect of her case, every detail of the life that had been hidden from her. Emily, her lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Diane, said, "There's something here I think you should see." Emily looked up from the pile of papers, taking the document Diane held out. As she read, her eyes widened. Is this real?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Diane nodded grimly. "It appears so. Jacob didn't just isolate you. He was systematically funneling your inheritance into his own accounts. By keeping you cut off from the world, he was able to manipulate your finances without your knowledge." Emily felt a fresh wave of anger wash over her. It wasn't just about control. It had been about money too. Her money. "What do we do?" she asked, her jaw set in determination. Diane's smile was predatory. "We go after him, every penny, Emily. We make sure he doesn't profit from what he did to you." As Emily left the office that day, her mind was whirling with legal terms and strategies. But beneath the overwhelm, she felt a growing sense of purpose. This fight wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every person who had ever felt powerless, every voice that had been silenced. Walking down the busy Indianapolis street, Emily found herself looking at the city with new eyes. This wasn't just the backdrop to her captivity anymore. It was the stage for her rebirth. She paused, looking up at the towering buildings around her. Somewhere up there, decisions were being made, lives were being changed. And now, for the first time, she was a part of it all. A nearby newsstand caught her eye. Her own face looked back at her from half a dozen magazine covers. Emily's fight. Breaking free. The woman who refused to be silenced. The headlines proclaimed her story in bold letters. As she stared at the magazines, a young woman approached the stand. She picked up one of the magazines with Emily's face, studying it intently. Then, noticing Emily standing there, she did a double take. "Oh my God," the woman gasped. "You're her! You're Emily Hayes!" Emily nodded, bracing herself for the usual barrage of questions. But instead, the woman's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she said softly. "Your story, it gave me the courage to leave my own bad situation. You're an inspiration." As the woman walked away, Emily stood rooted to the spot, a lump forming in her throat. In that moment, she realized the true power of what she had done. By reclaiming her own voice, she had given others the courage to find theirs. With renewed determination, Emily turned and continued down the street. She had a meeting to get to, a group of domestic violence survivors who had reached out asking her to speak to them. As she walked, Emily's phone buzzed with a message from Rachel. "Check your email," it read. "You're going to want to see this." Intrigued, Emily ducked into a nearby cafe and opened her laptop. The email from Rachel contained a single link. When Emily clicked it, she found herself looking at a crowdfunding page. The title read, "Emily's Voice, a Foundation for Survivors." The description explained that the foundation aimed to provide resources, legal aid and support for individuals trapped in abusive or controlling relationships, and it had already raised over $100,000. As Emily stared at the screen, tears blurring her vision, she felt a shift inside her. The anger, the pain, the fear, it was all still there. But alongside it now was something new, hope, purpose, a vision for the future. She closed her laptop, wiped her eyes, and stood up. She had a group of survivors waiting to hear from her, and for the first time in her life, Emily Hayes knew exactly what she wanted to say. Emily stood at the podium, her hands gripping the edges as she faced the sea of expectant faces before her. The conference room at the Indianapolis Convention Center was packed, filled with survivors, advocates, and members of the press. This was the official launch of the Renewal Foundation, and Emily was the keynote speaker. Taking a deep breath, she began, "6 months ago, I was a prisoner in my own home. Today, I stand before you as the founder of an organization dedicated to helping others break free from abuse and control. My journey from captivity to freedom has been difficult, but it has also shown me the incredible strength we all possess." As she spoke, Emily's mind drifted back over the whirlwind of events that had led to this moment. In the weeks following her dramatic revelation at Jacob's Gala, Emily had faced a barrage of challenges. The media scrutiny was relentless, with reporters camped outside her small apartment, clamoring for interviews and exclusive stories. At first, the attention had been overwhelming, triggering panic attacks that left her gasping for air in the safety of her bathroom. But Emily was determined not to be a victim any longer. With the help of a therapist recommended by the community center, she began to work through her trauma. Slowly, she learned to manage her anxiety and to use her newfound platform to advocate for change. Her first major public appearance had been on a national morning show. As the makeup artist had touched up her face before the cameras rolled, Emily had caught sight of herself in the mirror. Gone was the pale, timid woman who had lived in Jacob's shadow. In her place was someone new, someone stronger with a fire in her eyes. "You've got this," Olivia had whispered, squeezing her hand reassuringly. The two women had formed an unlikely alliance, with Olivia using her PR expertise to help Emily navigate the media landscape. The interview had been a turning point. Emily spoke eloquently about her experiences, her voice steady, even as she recounted the darkest moments of her captivity. When the host asked about her plans for the future, Emily had surprised even herself with her response. "I want to help others who are trapped like I was," she had said, her voice filled with conviction. "I'm starting a foundation to provide resources and support for survivors of domestic abuse and coercive control." The idea for the Renewal Foundation had been born in that moment, sparked by a desire to turn her pain into purpose. In the months that followed, Emily threw herself into making it a reality. There were setbacks, of course. Jacob's legal team fought viciously, attempting to discredit Emily and block her access to funds. There were days when the weight of it all felt crushing, when Emily wondered if she had taken on too much. One particularly difficult day stood out in her memory. She had just left a grueling deposition where Jacob's lawyers had grilled her for hours, picking apart every detail of her story. Exhausted and disheartened, she had wandered into a small park near the courthouse. As she sat on a bench fighting back tears, a woman approached her hesitantly. "Excuse me," the woman had said softly. "Are you Emily Hayes?" Emily had nodded, bracing herself for more questions, but instead the woman had simply said, "Thank you. Your story gave me the courage to leave my abusive husband. You saved my life." That encounter had renewed Emily's determination. She realized that her fight wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every person still trapped in a situation like hers had been. With renewed energy, Emily had redoubled her efforts. She worked closely with Rachel, whose investigative skills proved invaluable in uncovering the full extent of Jacob's crimes. Together they built a case that was not just about Emily's personal experience, but about a pattern of abuse and financial manipulation that spanned years. The Renewal Foundation took shape, with Emily insisting on a holistic approach to helping survivors. It wasn't just about providing legal aid or temporary shelter. It was about giving people the tools to rebuild their lives completely. "We're not just helping people escape," Emily had explained to her growing team. "We're helping them rediscover who they are without their abusers. We're helping them renew their sense of self." The foundation partnered with job training programs, therapists and financial advisors. They set up a network of safe houses across Indiana, with plans to expand nationally. Emily insisted on a 24/7 hotline, staffed by trained counselors who could provide immediate support to those in crisis. As word of the foundation spread, Emily found herself increasingly in demand as a speaker. She testified before the state legislature, advocating for stronger laws against coercive control. She spoke at universities, educating young people about the signs of abusive relationships. Each appearance brought its own challenges. There were still those who doubted her story, who accused her of exaggeration or attention-seeking. Online trolls attacked her viciously, their words sometimes cutting deep despite her best efforts to ignore them. But for every detractor, there were dozens of supporters. Survivors reached out to share their own stories, thanking Emily for giving them hope. Donations poured in, allowing the foundation to expand its services faster than they had dared to hope. Through it all, Emily continued to work on herself. She took self-defense classes, relishing the feeling of strength in her body. She returned to college, enrolling in night classes to finish the degree she had abandoned when she married Jacob. Each small accomplishment felt like a victory, another step towards reclaiming the life she had lost. There were lighter moments too. Moments when Emily surprised herself by laughing freely, by feeling joy without the shadow of fear. Like the day Olivia had convinced her to go skydiving as a symbolic leap into your new life. As they had stood at the open door of the plane, wind whipping around them, Olivia had shouted over the noise, "Are you ready?" Emily had looked down at the patchwork of fields below, her heart racing with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. In that moment, she felt truly alive. "I'm ready!" she had yelled back and jumped. The free fall had been terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. As her parachute opened and she floated towards the ground, Emily had felt a profound sense of peace. She was no longer falling, she was flying. Now standing at the podium at the Renewal Foundation's launch, Emily drew strength from these memories. She looked out at the audience, seeing faces filled with hope and determination. "Our past does not define us," she continued, her voice strong and clear. "It is merely the starting point of our journey. Today, we take the first step towards a future where no one has to suffer in silence, where every person has the support they need to break free and rediscover themselves." As she spoke, Emily noticed a familiar face in the crowd. Margaret, the kind woman from the community center who had first offered Emily a lifeline, sat in the front row, beaming with pride. "The Renewal Foundation is more than just an organization," Emily said, her eyes meeting Margaret's. "It's a community, a family, a promise that no one has to face their darkest moments alone." She went on to outline the foundation's initiatives, the safe houses, the legal aid program, the job training partnerships. With each point, she could see the audience becoming more engaged, more inspired. "But we can't do this alone," Emily concluded. "We need every one of you. Whether you're a survivor looking for support, an ally wanting to help, or someone who simply believes that everyone deserves to live free from fear and control, you have a place here. Together, we can create a world where renewal isn't just possible, it's inevitable." As applause filled the room, Emily felt a surge of emotion. This was more than she had ever dreamed possible in those dark days of her captivity. She had not only reclaimed her own life, but was now in a position to help others do the same. The rest of the event was a blur of handshakes, hugs, and heartfelt conversations. Emily listened to survivors share their stories, offering words of encouragement and support. She spoke with potential donors, articulating her vision for the foundation's future with a confidence that still sometimes surprised her. As the crowd began to thin, Emily found a quiet moment to slip away. She made her way to a small balcony overlooking the city, needing a moment to process the enormity of what had just happened. The Indianapolis skyline stretched out before her, the lights of the buildings twinkling in the early evening darkness. Somewhere out there, she knew, were people still trapped in situations like hers had been. But now, thanks to the Renewal Foundation, they had a beacon of hope. "Quite a view, isn't it?" a voice said behind her. Emily turned to see Rachel approaching, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. The journalist had become one of Emily's closest friends and staunchest allies over the past months. "It's beautiful," Emily replied, accepting the offered glass. "I never thought I'd be seeing it like this." Rachel leaned against the railing beside her. "You've come a long way, Emily. You should be proud." Emily nodded, taking a sip of champagne. "I am, but there's still so much to do." "And you'll do it," Rachel said firmly. "But tonight, let yourself celebrate. You've earned it." As they stood in companionable silence, Emily reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The fear, the pain, the moments of doubt, they were all part of her story, but they no longer defined her. "You know," Emily said softly, "there were times when I thought I'd never be free, that I'd spend the rest of my life in that house, watching the world go by without me." Rachel turned to her, her expression serious. "But you didn't. You fought back. You reclaimed your life." Emily smiled, raising her glass. "To renewal," she said. "To renewal," Rachel echoed, clinking her glass against Emily's. As they turned back to the view, Emily felt a sense of peace settle over her. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, setbacks, moments of doubt. But she was no longer facing them alone. She had a purpose, a community, a chance to make a real difference in the world. The next morning, Emily woke early, her mind already racing with plans for the foundation's next steps. As she made her coffee, she caught sight of the day's newspaper on her kitchen counter. The front page featured a large photo of her from the previous night's event, standing at the podium with the Renewal Foundation logo behind her. The headline read, "From Captive to Crusader, Emily Hayes launches groundbreaking foundation for abuse survivors." As she read the article, Emily was struck by a quote from one of the attendees. "Emily Hayes isn't just telling her own story anymore. She's helping all of us write new chapters in ours." The words filled her with a mix of pride and humility. She knew the road ahead would be challenging, but she was ready to face whatever came her way. Setting down the paper, Emily picked up her phone and dialed a familiar number. "Margaret," she said when the older woman answered, "I was wondering if you'd like to meet for breakfast. I have some ideas I'd love to run by you for our next community outreach program." As she listened to Margaret's enthusiastic response, Emily felt a surge of gratitude. She had come so far from the scared, isolated woman she had once been. Now she was not just surviving, she was thriving and helping others do the same. Hanging up the phone, Emily grabbed her keys and headed out the door. She had a full day ahead of her, meetings with her legal team, interviews with potential new hires for the foundation, and a support group session to lead in the evening. As she stepped out into the bright Indianapolis morning, Emily took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face. She was no longer hiding in the shadows. She was standing in the light, ready to face whatever the day might bring. The future stretched out before her, full of possibilities, and for the first time in years, Emily Hayes was excited to see where it might lead. As the crisp autumn air swept through Indianapolis, Emily stood backstage at the National Conference on Domestic Violence Prevention, her heart racing with a mix of anticipation and nervous energy. In just a few minutes, she would deliver the keynote address to an audience of thousands, survivors, advocates, lawmakers, and media from across the country. This moment, more than any other, would define the journey she had undertaken over the past year. Running her fingers over the smooth surface of the locket around her neck, a gift from the first survivor the Renewal Foundation had helped relocate, Emily took a deep breath. She could hear the low hum of the crowd beyond the curtain, feel the weight of expectation pressing down on her shoulders. "You've got this, Em," Rachel said softly, appearing at her side. The journalist, now a board member of the Renewal Foundation, squeezed Emily's hand reassuringly. "Remember, you're not just speaking for yourself anymore, you're speaking for all of them." Emily nodded, thinking of the faces she'd encountered over the past year, the women and men who had found the courage to leave abusive situations, the children who were finally experiencing safety and stability, the families rebuilt from the ashes of trauma. Their stories fueled her resolve. As the MC began the introduction, Emily closed her eyes, centering herself. When she opened them again, There was a steely determination in her gaze. She was ready. The spotlight hit her as she walked onto the stage, momentarily blinding. As her eyes adjusted, the sea of faces came into focus. Emily approached the podium, her steps steady, her posture confident, a far cry from the timid woman who had first emerged from Jacob's mansion. "Good morning," she began, her voice clear and strong. "My name is Emily Hayes, and a little over a year ago, I was a prisoner in my own home." A hush fell over the audience as Emily recounted her story. The years of isolation, the psychological manipulation, the moment she decided to reclaim her life. She spoke of the challenges she had faced since going public, the legal battles, the media scrutiny, the process of rebuilding her sense of self. "But my story is not unique," Emily continued, her voice taking on a passionate edge. "Every day, countless individuals face similar situations. They are isolated, controlled, made to feel powerless. Today, I want to talk about how we can change that narrative, how we can transform from survivors to thrivers." As Emily delved into the work of the Renewal Foundation, outlining their comprehensive approach to supporting survivors, she could see heads nodding, people leaning forward in their seats. She spoke of the safe houses they had established, the job training programs, the counseling services, and the legal aid they provided. "But perhaps our most important work," Emily said, her voice softening, "is helping survivors rediscover themselves, to remember who they were before the abuse, and to dream of who they can become." She shared stories of the people they had helped. A young mother who had gone back to school to become a social worker, a former executive who had found healing through art therapy and was now a successful painter, a teenager who had escaped an abusive home and was now thriving in college. As Emily neared the conclusion of her speech, she paused, taking in the rapt attention of the audience. This was the moment she had been building towards, the real reason she had agreed to speak at this conference. "Today, I'm excited to announce the next phase of the Renewal Foundation's mission," she said, her voice gaining strength. "We are launching a nationwide initiative to change the legal landscape surrounding coercive control and domestic abuse." A murmur ran through the crowd as Emily outlined their plan, a coordinated effort to lobby for stronger laws against coercive control, improved training for law enforcement and judges, and increased funding for support services. "But we can't do this alone," Emily said, her voice rising with passion. "We need every one of you. Whether you're a survivor, an advocate, a lawmaker, or simply someone who believes that everyone deserves to live free from fear and control, we need your voice, your support, your action." As Emily's words rang out through the conference hall, a figure at the back of the room shifted uncomfortably. Jacob Hayes, his once immaculate appearance now showing signs of strain, watched the woman he had once controlled command the attention of thousands. He had come here with the intention of confronting Emily, of trying one last time to regain control of the narrative. But as he listened to her speak, he began to realize the futility of his efforts. Emily, unaware of Jacob's presence, continued her impassioned address. "I stand before you today not as a victim, but as living proof that renewal is possible, that we can rise from the ashes of trauma stronger, more resilient, and more determined than ever to create change." As she spoke these words, Emily's eyes scanned the crowd, and for a brief moment they locked with Jacob's. A flicker of recognition passed between them, a silent acknowledgement of their shared history and the vastly different paths they now walked. But Emily didn't falter. If anything, seeing Jacob there strengthened her resolve. She launched into the final part of her speech with renewed vigor. "Today, I challenge each of you to join us in this fight, to lend your voices to those who have been silenced, to extend your hands to those who are reaching for help, to stand up and declare that abuse in any form is unacceptable." As Emily's words echoed through the hall, Jacob slipped quietly out of the room, the weight of his actions finally beginning to settle on his shoulders. Unaware of this silent drama, Emily continued, her voice rising to a powerful crescendo. "Together we can create a world where no one has to live in fear, where every person has the support they need to break free and rediscover themselves. A world where renewal isn't just possible, it's inevitable." The applause was deafening as Emily concluded her speech. As she stood there, bathed in the spotlight and the admiration of the crowd, she felt a profound sense of completion. This moment represented not just her personal triumph, but the culmination of a year's worth of hard work, dedication, and the collective efforts of everyone involved with the Renewal Foundation. As Emily made her way off the stage, she was immediately enveloped in a group hug by Rachel, Olivia, and Margaret. Tears of joy and pride flowed freely as they celebrated this milestone together. "Emily, that was incredible," Olivia said, her eyes shining. "You've come so far. I'm so proud of you." Margaret, who had become like a second mother to Emily, cupped her face gently. "You're changing lives, my dear, never forget that." As the initial excitement died down, Emily found herself surrounded by a swarm of people, survivors wanting to share their stories, advocates eager to collaborate, and journalists clamoring for interviews. She navigated these interactions with a grace and poise that would have been unthinkable a year ago, her natural empathy and hard-earned wisdom shining through in every conversation. It was late in the afternoon when Emily finally managed to slip away for a moment of quiet. She made her way to a small balcony overlooking the city, needing a breath of fresh air and a moment to process the events of the day. As she stood there gazing out at the Indianapolis skyline, she heard footsteps behind her. Turning, she found herself face to face with Jacob. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, the weight of their shared history hanging heavy in the air between them. Emily felt a flutter of fear in her chest, an echo of the control he had once held over her. But she stood her ground, her posture straight, her gaze steady. "Hello, Jacob," she said, her voice calm but firm. Jacob looked older than Emily remembered, the strain of the past year evident in the lines on his face and the grey at his temples. "Emily," he said, his voice a mix of emotions she couldn't quite decipher. I heard your speech." Emily nodded, waiting for him to continue. She could see him struggling with his words, a far cry from the smooth, controlling man she had once known. "I came here today thinking—" Jacob paused, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know what I was thinking. That I could somehow fix this, make it all go away. But listening to you up there, I realized something." Emily raised an eyebrow, her guard still up, but curiosity peaking. "And what's that?" Jacob met her gaze, and for the first time, Emily saw genuine remorse in his eyes. "I realized that I was wrong about everything. What I did to you, it's unforgivable. I see that now." The admission hung in the air between them. Emily felt a complex swirl of emotions, anger, vindication, a touch of pity, but most prominently a sense of final release. "You're right," Emily said softly. "It is unforgivable, but that doesn't mean I'm going to let it control my life anymore. I've moved beyond what you did to me, Jacob. I've found purpose, strength, a life I never could have imagined when I was with you." Jacob nodded, his shoulders slumping slightly. "I can see that. You're incredible, Emily. What you're doing with the foundation, the lives you're changing, I never gave you the chance to be that person. I'm sorry." Emily took a deep breath, feeling the last vestiges of Jacob's control over her life finally slipping away. "Your apology doesn't change the past, Jacob, but I hope it means you've learned something, that you'll get help, make different choices in the future." "I will," Jacob said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm turning myself in, Emily. I've already spoken to my lawyer. I'm going to plead guilty to all charges. It's time I face the consequences of my actions." Emily felt a wave of shock wash over her. This was the last thing she had expected when she saw Jacob. For a moment, she didn't know how to respond. Finally, she said, That's the right thing to do, Jacob. I hope you find a way to make amends, not just to me, but to everyone your actions have hurt." Jacob nodded, then turned to leave. At the door, he paused and looked back. "You've built something amazing, Emily. I'm sorry I tried to keep you from becoming this person. I hope you continue to thrive." With that, he was gone, leaving Emily alone with her thoughts. She turned back to the cityscape, feeling a complex mix of emotions washing over her. It wasn't forgiveness. She wasn't sure she'd ever be able to forgive Jacob fully, but it was closure. The final chapter of that part of her life was ending, allowing her to fully embrace the new story she was writing. Emily wasn't sure how long she stood there, processing everything that had happened. The sound of the balcony door opening again roused her from her thoughts. She turned to see Rachel approaching, concern evident on her face. "Em, are you okay? I saw Jacob leaving." Emily gave her friend a small smile. "I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. I think it's finally over." As Emily recounted her conversation with Jacob, Rachel listened with a mix of surprise and cautious optimism. When Emily finished, Rachel pulled her into a tight hug. "You did it, Em," she said softly. You've won. Not just against Jacob, but against everything he represented. You're free. As they broke apart, Emily felt a weight lift from her shoulders. You're right, she said, a genuine smile spreading across her face. I am free, and there's still so much work to do. Together they walked back into the conference center, where the bustling energy of change and hope was palpable. The rest of the day passed in a whirlwind of activity. Panel discussions, networking sessions, and planning meetings for the Renewal Foundation's new initiatives. As evening fell, Emily found herself on stage once more, this time surrounded by her team and supporters. They were announcing the official launch of their nationwide campaign, outlining their goals and the steps they would take to achieve them. Looking out at the sea of faces, survivors, advocates, allies, Emily felt a surge of hope and determination. This was more than just a foundation or a campaign. It was a movement, a tidal wave of change that would sweep across the country, challenging outdated laws and societal norms, offering hope and practical support to those who needed it most. A year ago, I couldn't have imagined standing here, Emily said, her voice strong and clear. I was trapped, isolated, afraid. But today, I stand before you not as a victim, but as a leader. And I'm not alone. Each of you here today, whether you're a survivor, an advocate, or an ally, you are leaders too. Together, we are going to change the narrative around domestic abuse and coercive control. As cheers erupted from the crowd, Emily felt a sense of purpose and belonging wash over her. This was where she was meant to be, doing the work she was meant to do. Later that night, as Emily prepared to leave the conference center, she paused in the now empty main hall. The events of the day played through her mind, her speech, the confrontation with Jacob, the launch of their new campaign, each moment a testament to how far she had come, how much she had grown. She thought about the Emily of a year ago, the woman who had been too afraid to leave her own home. That Emily could never have imagined this, speaking in front of thousands, confronting her abuser, leading a national movement for change. As she stood there, in the quiet of the empty hall, Emily made a silent promise to herself and to all the survivors out there still waiting for their chance at renewal. She would continue to fight, to speak out, to push for change. She would use her voice not just for herself, but for all those who had been silenced. With a deep breath, Emily turned and walked towards the exit. As she stepped out into the cool night air, she felt a sense of excitement for what the future held. The road ahead would not be easy. Changing laws, challenging societal norms, and helping survivors rebuild their lives was complex, challenging work. But as Emily looked up at the stars twinkling in the Indianapolis sky, she felt ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. She was no longer the prisoner in a gilded cage. She was Emily Hayes, survivor, advocate, leader, and her work was just beginning. The next morning, Emily woke to find her phone buzzing with notifications. News of Jacob's surrender to authorities had broken overnight, and media outlets were clamoring for her response. There were also messages from survivors across the country, inspired by her speech and Jacob's accountability, reaching out for help and support. As Emily began to sift through the messages, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Jacob's decision to face the consequences of his actions was a significant victory, not just for her but for survivors everywhere. It sent a powerful message that abusers could be held accountable, that the truth could prevail. But even as she celebrated this victory, Emily knew that the real work was only just beginning. Jacob was just one abuser among many, and the systems that had allowed his abuse to go unchecked for so long were still in place. With determination, Emily began to plan the Renewal Foundation's next steps. There were lawmakers to meet, awareness campaigns to launch, support services to expand. The Foundation's phone lines were already lighting up with calls from survivors inspired by the conference and the news of Jacob's surrender. As she worked, Emily thought about the long journey that had brought her to this point. The fear, the pain, the moments of doubt, they were all part of her story, but they no longer defined her. Instead, they had become the fuel that drove her forward, the experiences that allowed her to connect with and help others. Emily Hayes had transformed from a captive to a crusader, from a victim to a victor. And as she looked to the future, she knew that her greatest chapters were still to be written. The Renewal Foundation was more than just an organization. It was a beacon of hope, a catalyst for change, a promise that no one had to face their darkest moments alone. As the sun rose over Indianapolis, casting a warm glow over the city, Emily smiled. She was ready for whatever the day might bring, knowing that each challenge was an opportunity to make a difference, to help someone find their path to renewal. The story of Emily Hayes, once a secret kept hidden behind the high walls of a mansion, had become a rallying cry for survivors and advocates across the nation. And it was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. As the seasons changed in Indianapolis, the impact of Emily Hayes' story and the work of the Renewal Foundation continued to ripple outward, touching lives far beyond the city limits. The conclusion of Emily's personal battle with Jacob marked not an end but a new beginning, both for her and for the countless individuals her journey had inspired. In the months following the National Conference on Domestic Violence Prevention, Emily found herself at the forefront of a nationwide movement. The Renewal Foundation, once a small local organization, had grown into a powerful force for change, with chapters sprouting up in cities across the country. One crisp autumn morning, Emily stood before the Indiana state capitol, surrounded by a sea of supporters. The air was electric with anticipation as she prepared to address the crowd gathered for the signing of the Emily's Law Bill, a comprehensive piece of legislation aimed at strengthening protections for survivors of domestic abuse and coercive control. "Today," Emily began, her voice carrying across the attentive crowd, "we take a significant step forward in our fight against domestic abuse and coercive control. This law isn't just about punishing abusers. It's about empowering survivors, educating our communities, and creating a society where everyone can live free from fear and control." As she spoke, Emily caught sight of familiar faces in the crowd. Rachel, her steadfast friend and ally, stood near the front, notepad in hand, ready to document this historic moment. Olivia, who had become an invaluable partner in the Foundation's public relations efforts, managed the media presence with practiced ease. And there, towards the back, Emily spotted Margaret, the community center worker, who had first offered her a lifeline. The older woman's eyes shone with pride as she watched Emily speak. The governor's signing of Emily's Law marked a turning point, not just for Indiana, but for the nation. Other states began to take notice, reaching out to the Renewal Foundation for guidance on crafting similar legislation. Emily found herself traveling across the country, testifying before state legislatures and meeting with lawmakers to share her story and advocate for change. But even as her public profile grew, Emily remained committed to the grassroots work that had been the Foundation's cornerstone. She made a point of regularly visiting the Renewal Foundation's shelters and community centers, sitting down with survivors to hear their stories and offer support. It was during one of these visits that Emily had an unexpected encounter. She was touring a new job training facility the Foundation had opened in downtown Indianapolis when she noticed a familiar face among the volunteers. Jacob Hayes, looking markedly different from the polished, controlling man she had once known, was quietly assisting with a computer skills class. Their eyes met across the room, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Emily approached him, her heart racing but her steps steady. "Jacob," she said, her voice calm, "I didn't expect to see you here." Jacob's face was a mix of shame and determination. "Emily," he replied, his voice low, I hope it's okay that I'm here. After I served my time, I wanted to find a way to make amends, not just to you, but to everyone I've hurt." Emily studied him for a moment, noting the changes in his demeanor. Gone was the air of superiority, replaced by a humbler, more thoughtful presence. "How long have you been volunteering?" she asked. "About 3 months now," Jacob replied. "I started in the maintenance department, but when they found out about my computer skills, they asked if I'd help with the classes. I know it doesn't make up for what I did, but—" Emily held up a hand, stopping him. "You're right, it doesn't erase the past, but it's a start, Jacob. It's good that you're trying to give back." As they talked, Emily felt a complex mix of emotions. The fear and anger that had once dominated her feelings towards Jacob were still there, but muted now, overshadowed by a sense of closure and even a hint of respect for his efforts to change. Their conversation was interrupted by one of the program coordinators, eager to show Emily the rest of the facility. As she prepared to move on, Emily turned back to Jacob. "Keep up the good work," she said simply, before continuing her tour. This unexpected encounter with Jacob served as a powerful reminder of how far Emily had come. She was no longer the frightened, controlled woman she had once been. She could now face her former abuser with confidence and composure, secure in her own strength and the knowledge of the good she was doing in the world. As news of Jacob's volunteer work spread, it sparked a heated debate within the Renewal Foundation and the broader survivor community. Some saw it as a positive step towards rehabilitation and restorative justice, while others were uncomfortable with the idea of an abuser working so closely with survivor support services. Emily found herself at the center of this debate, forced to confront her own complex feelings about Jacob's attempt at redemption. After much reflection and consultation with her team and therapist, Emily made a decision that would once again reshape the Foundation's approach. At the next board meeting, Emily proposed a new initiative, a carefully monitored program for reformed abusers to contribute to anti-abuse efforts. "We can't just focus on supporting survivors," she argued. "If we want to truly end the cycle of abuse, we need to find ways to rehabilitate and reintegrate those who have caused harm, while always prioritizing the safety and comfort of survivors." The proposal was met with mixed reactions, but Emily's passion and thoughtful approach eventually won over the majority of the board. The program, which would come to be known as Paths to Change, was launched on a trial basis, with strict guidelines and constant oversight. Jacob, under close supervision, became one of the first participants in the program. While he was never allowed to work directly with survivors, his insights into the mindset of abusers proved valuable in developing prevention and education programs. As the Renewal Foundation's influence grew, so did the challenges it faced. Conservative groups pushed back against the Foundation's advocacy for stronger domestic violence laws, arguing that they infringed on family privacy. Emily found herself the target of smear campaigns and even threats, necessitating increased security measures. But for every obstacle, there seemed to be an even greater surge of support. Survivors from around the world reached out to share how Emily's story had inspired them to seek help or leave abusive situations. Donations poured in, allowing the Foundation to expand its services and reach even more people in need. One particularly memorable moment came when Emily was invited to speak at the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. Standing before representatives from countries around the world, Emily shared her vision of a global movement to combat domestic abuse and coercive control. "The dynamics of abuse know no borders," she told the Assembly. "Whether in Indianapolis or India, London or Lagos, survivors face similar challenges. But together, we can build a world where everyone has the support and resources they need to break free from abuse and reclaim their lives." Her speech received a standing ovation, and in its wake, the Renewal Foundation began to form partnerships with organizations around the globe. Emily found herself traveling internationally, meeting with survivors and advocates from diverse cultures and backgrounds. These experiences broadened Emily's perspective and deepened her commitment to the cause. She worked tirelessly to ensure that the Renewal Foundation's approach was culturally sensitive and adaptable to different contexts. Programs were translated into multiple languages, and local leaders were empowered to tailor the Foundation's resources to their specific needs. Back in Indianapolis, the Foundation's original community center, where Emily had first found support, underwent a major expansion. The new facility, named the Margaret Williams Center in honor of the woman who had first offered Emily a lifeline, became a model for comprehensive survivor support. On the day of the center's grand opening, Emily stood beside Margaret, their hands clasped as they cut the ribbon together. "This center," Emily addressed the gathered crowd, "is a testament to the power of compassion and community. It stands as a beacon of hope, a promise that no one has to face abuse alone." Margaret, her eyes glistening with tears, squeezed Emily's hand. "You've come so far, my dear," she whispered. "You've turned your pain into purpose, and look at all the lives you're changing." As the years passed, Emily's personal life also underwent significant changes. The dedication she poured into her work often left little time for personal relationships, but Emily found deep fulfillment in the connections she formed with fellow survivors and advocates. She also reconnected with her family, from whom she had been isolated during her years with Jacob. The process of rebuilding these relationships was not always easy, as Emily had to navigate feelings of abandonment and resentment. But with time and the help of therapy, she was able to forge new, healthier bonds with her parents and siblings. Emily's journey of healing and growth continued to evolve. She pursued further education, earning a master's degree in social work to better understand and address the complex issues surrounding domestic abuse. Her thesis, which examined the long-term effects of coercive control on survivors, was published in several academic journals and became required reading in many social work programs. As Emily approached the 5-year anniversary of her escape from Jacob's control, she found herself reflecting on the incredible journey she had undertaken. The frightened, isolated woman she had once been seemed like a distant memory, replaced by a confident, passionate advocate who had touched countless lives. To mark this milestone, Emily decided to write a book, chronicling not just her own story, but the stories of survivors she had met through her work with the Renewal Foundation. The process of writing was both cathartic and challenging, forcing Emily to revisit some of her darkest moments while also celebrating the strength and resilience of survivors. The book, titled Unsilenced: Journey from Survival to Renewal, became an instant bestseller. Emily embarked on a nationwide book tour, using each stop as an opportunity to raise awareness about domestic abuse and promote the work of local survivor support organizations. During a stop in New York, Emily appeared on a popular daytime talk show. As she sat under the bright studio lights, facing an audience of millions, she felt a sense of calm purpose. "You've accomplished so much in just 5 years," the host remarked. "What drives you to keep going, to keep fighting this battle?" Emily smiled, her eyes bright with conviction. "It's simple, really. Every time I meet a survivor who's found the courage to leave an abusive situation, every time I see a law changed to better protect vulnerable individuals, every time I hear about an abuser choosing to get help and change their behavior, I'm reminded that change is possible, that healing is possible, and that's worth fighting for, every single day." As the audience erupted in applause, Emily felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. She was grateful for her freedom, for the opportunity to make a difference, and for every person who had supported her along the way. The Renewal Foundation continued to grow and evolve under Emily's leadership. New initiatives were launched, including a program focused on teen dating violence prevention and a partnership with tech companies to develop apps and tools to help individuals in abusive situations safely plan their escape. Emily also began to focus on succession planning, recognizing the importance of ensuring the foundation's work would continue beyond her personal involvement. She mentored young advocates, empowering them to take on leadership roles within the organization. One of these young leaders was Zoe, a survivor who had come to the Renewal Foundation as a scared teenager and had grown into a passionate and capable advocate. Emily saw much of herself in Zoe and took great pride in nurturing her potential. "You know," Emily told Zoe one day as they worked late in the Foundation's offices, "there might come a time when I'll need to step back from the day-to-day operations here. When that day comes, I hope you'll be ready to take the reins." Zoe looked at Emily with a mix of surprise and determination. "I'll do my best to continue your legacy, Emily. You've changed so many lives, including mine." Emily smiled, feeling a sense of continuity and hope for the future. "It's not about continuing my legacy, Zoe. It's about creating your own. The foundation will evolve and change, as it should. What matters is that we keep fighting for a world free from abuse and control." As Emily approached her 40th birthday, she found herself at another crossroads. The Renewal Foundation was thriving, with chapters in every state and partnerships around the world. The legal landscape for domestic abuse survivors had improved dramatically, thanks in large part to the Foundation's advocacy efforts. Emily's personal story, once a source of shame and fear, had become a beacon of hope for countless individuals. She began to consider what the next chapter of her life might look like. While her passion for the cause remained as strong as ever, Emily recognized the importance of balance and self-care, lessons she often emphasized to the survivors she worked with. After much reflection, Emily decided to take a sabbatical. She planned to spend 6 months traveling, visiting Renewal Foundation chapters around the world and working on her second book. This time away would allow her to recharge, gain new perspectives, and ensure that the foundation could function smoothly in her absence. Before leaving, Emily paid one last visit to the Margaret Williams Center. As she walked through the bustling halls, she was struck by how much had changed since she first stepped into that small community center years ago. She paused by a wall covered in photos, survivors who had rebuilt their lives, advocates who had changed laws, volunteers who had given countless hours to the cause. Among them was a photo of Jacob, taken at a Paths to Change graduation ceremony. His face was solemn but hopeful, a testament to the possibility of transformation. As Emily studied the photos, she felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find Margaret standing beside her, a warm smile on her face. "Look at all you've accomplished, my dear," Margaret said, gesturing to the wall of photos. Emily shook her head, smiling. "Not just me, Margaret. All of us. Every person in these photos, and so many more who aren't. We did this together." Margaret pulled Emily into a hug. "And there's still so much more to do, but you've laid a foundation that will continue to change lives for generations to come." As Emily prepared to embark on her sabbatical, she felt a profound sense of peace. The journey hadn't been easy, and there were still challenges ahead, but she had found her voice, her purpose, and a community of supporters and fellow advocates who shared her vision of a world free from abuse and control. Emily Hayes had transformed from a captive to a crusader, from a survivor to a beacon of hope for others. And as she looked to the future, she knew that her story, and the story of the Renewal Foundation, was far from over. It was, in many ways, just beginning. 10 years had passed since Emily Hayes first stepped onto the national stage, sharing her story of captivity and renewal. Now, on a warm summer evening in Indianapolis, she stood on the rooftop garden of the Renewal Foundation's global headquarters, watching the sun set over the city skyline. At 50, Emily exuded a quiet confidence and inner peace that had been hard-won through years of healing, advocacy, and personal growth. Her chestnut hair was now streaked with elegant strands of silver, and the lines around her eyes spoke of both laughter and determination. The rooftop was filled with people, survivors, advocates, supporters, and staff, all gathered to celebrate the Foundation's 10th anniversary. As Emily looked out over the crowd, she felt a wave of emotion wash over her. Each face represented a story of struggle, resilience, and hope. Zoe, now the Foundation's executive director, approached Emily with a champagne flute. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked, handing Emily the glass. Emily smiled, taking a sip, just marveling at how far we've come, and thinking about all the work still ahead. Zoe nodded, her eyes scanning the crowd. "We wouldn't be here without you, Emily. You gave us all a voice when we needed it most." Before Emily could respond, a hush fell over the gathering. All eyes turned to the small stage where Margaret, now in her 80s but still sharp as ever, stood at the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," Margaret began, her voice strong despite her years, "we're here tonight to celebrate not just an organization, but a movement that began with one woman finding the courage to speak her truth." As Margaret continued, Emily felt a lump form in her throat. She thought back to that frightened, isolated woman she had once been, trapped in a gilded cage of Jacob's making. The journey from there to here seemed almost impossible, yet here she stood. Margaret's voice brought her back to the present. "And now, I'd like to invite that woman, our founder and guiding light, Emily Hayes, to say a few words." The crowd erupted in applause as Emily made her way to the stage. As she looked out over the sea of faces, she was struck by the diversity before her. People of all ages, races, and backgrounds united in their commitment to ending domestic abuse and coercive control. 10 years ago, Emily began, her voice clear and strong, "I stood before a different crowd and told my story for the first time. I was terrified, unsure, but determined to make a difference." She paused, allowing her gaze to sweep across the gathering. "Today I stand before you not just as a survivor, but as a witness to the incredible power of renewal. Every person here tonight is a testament to that power, the power to heal, to grow, to transform pain into purpose." As Emily spoke, she reflected on the milestones of the past decade. The Renewal Foundation now had a presence in over 50 countries. Emily's law had been adopted in various forms by states across the nation. The Foundation's education programs had reached millions of young people, teaching them about healthy relationships and the warning signs of abuse. But beyond these tangible achievements, Emily knew the real impact of their work lay in the individual lives touched, the silent sufferers who had found their voices, the cycles of abuse that had been broken. "Our work is far from over," Emily continued, her voice taking on a note of determination. "But tonight, I want each of you to look around. See the community we've built, the change we've created together. This is what happens when we refuse to be silenced, when we stand up for ourselves and for each other." As she concluded her speech, Emily raised her glass. To 10 years of renewal, and to the brighter future we're building together. May we continue to light the way for those still finding their path to freedom. The crowd echoed her toast, the air filled with a sense of celebration and purpose. As Emily stepped down from the stage, she was enveloped in a warm hug by Margaret. "You did it, my dear," Margaret whispered, her eyes shining with pride. "You turned your pain into a beacon of hope for so many." Emily squeezed Margaret's hand, feeling a rush of gratitude for the woman who had been there from the very beginning. "We did it, Margaret. All of us, together." As the evening wore on, Emily found herself drawn to a quiet corner of the rooftop. She leaned against the railing, looking out over the city she had once seen as her prison, now transformed into a symbol of her freedom and purpose. A familiar voice broke into her reverie. "It's quite a view, isn't it?" Emily turned to see Rachel, her old friend and ally, joining her at the railing. The years had been kind to Rachel, her face lined with the wisdom of a life spent pursuing truth and justice. "I was just thinking," Emily said softly, "about that night when you first came to the mansion. Did you ever imagine we'd end up here?" Rachel shook her head, a wry smile on her lips. "Not in my wildest dreams. But I knew, even then, that your story had the power to change lives. I just didn't realize how many." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, both lost in memories of the long and sometimes difficult journey that had brought them to this point. "Have you heard from Jacob recently?" Rachel asked, her voice gentle. Emily nodded. "He's still working with the Paths to Change program. Last I heard, he was mentoring other reformed abusers, helping them understand the impact of their actions." She paused, considering her words carefully. "You know, for a long time I thought closure meant never having to think about Jacob again. But I've realized it's not about forgetting the past. It's about reframing it, using it to fuel positive change." Rachel squeezed her arm supportively. "You've done that and more, Emily. You've given so many people the tools to rewrite their own stories." As the night drew to a close, Emily found herself back on the stage, surrounded by her team, her friends, and hundreds of supporters. Looking out at the sea of faces, each representing a story of survival and renewal, she felt a profound sense of purpose and hope. 10 years ago, Emily said, her voice carrying across the now quiet rooftop, "I found my voice. Today I see a chorus of voices, each one strong, each one vital. Together, we are writing a new chapter, not just in our own lives, but in the story of our society." She raised her glass one final time, to freedom, to renewal, to the power of breaking the silence, and to the day when no one has to live in fear or under control. Until then, we'll keep fighting, keep supporting, keep renewing. Thank you all for being part of this journey. As applause erupted once more, Emily felt a sense of completion, of a circle closing. The frightened woman in the mansion was a distant memory, replaced by a leader, an advocate, a beacon of hope for others. Yet even as she celebrated how far she had come, Emily knew that the work was far from over. There were still voices waiting to be heard, still lives waiting to be renewed. And as long as that was true, she would continue to speak out, to fight, to light the way for others. As the crowd began to disperse, Emily remained on the rooftop, watching the stars emerge in the night sky. She thought of all the survivors out there, some still trapped, some just beginning their journey to freedom, some thriving in their renewed lives. To all of them, and to her younger self, Emily silently promised, "Your voice matters, your freedom matters, your renewal is possible, and you are not alone." With a deep breath, Emily turned away from the view and walked towards the future, ready for whatever challenges and triumphs lay ahead. The story of Emily Hayes and the Renewal Foundation was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning. If this story touched you in any way and sparked your curiosity for emotionally rich and inspiring tales, don't stop here. Subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and stay tuned for new stories that might change your perspective on life. Each video is an invitation to explore narratives that resonate deeply with the heart. Speaking of which, why not click on the next video? I'm sure it will move you as well. See you there.